Hello guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're doing well and keeping safe on this Saturday. It's a lovely Saturday in London. The sun is shining and Chelsea basically have been taken over by Todd Boehly and Clear Lake Capital. It's all but done, as we've been saying in recent days, but we do now have an update from the club. The statement that was released this morning, big news, and hopefully we're going to get kind of that glamour and extensive sort of presentation that we were hoping for at the start of next week, but massive comfort and relief. We've also got some transfer news to get through, incomings, outgoings, and some rumours over targets that I think are interesting to talk about today. Before we do, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys. We have just passed 26k subs. Considering that I've only been back for about a week, it's incredible the support that's been on the channel, the support, the kind comments. It really means the world to me. So hopefully by the end of this year we can get to 30k, which would be absolutely massive personally. And thank you once again for your support. It really is humbling. But let's start off with the statement that was released this morning. It was a very short statement. It wasn't that extensive. I think when I opened the tab this morning, I was expecting kind of pictures and quotes, but it wasn't quite that. This is what was said this morning and released by Chelsea. Chelsea Football Club can confirm that a final and definitive agreement was entered into last night to sell the club to the Todd Boehly Clear Lake Capital Consortium. It is expected that the transaction will be completed on Monday. The club will update further at that time. So not quite there in terms of all the pictures and maybe videos. We might get an interview with Todd Boehly. You never know with this new ownership, but it's a relief. We're there. And for those 3 Arsenal fans who are still stuck on the away for terms and conditions page, I think you can close that tab now, because it looks like Chelsea will be taken over and we will be in the Champions League next year. But if it gives you comfort, stay on that page for whatever reason you're doing it this week. But let's get into some transfers, because as we've been saying this week, once this takeover is completed, you fully expect, we kind of know it's going to be hands-on. Chelsea have got to move quickly in the transfer window to get players in. And one of those names that we've been speaking about this week is Jules Kounde, the Sevilla defender. And Matt Law wrote a piece last night that Chelsea are hopeful of signing Jules Kounde. The West Londoners offered 42 million for Kounde 12 months ago and believed they had clinched an agreement, only for Sevilla to move the goalpost and insist the 67 million clause in his contract was paid in full. But now Chelsea are hopeful that another bid in the region of 42 million, with the possibility of add-ons to take the total value of the deal up to 50 million, will be enough to land Kounde. Sevilla have agreed to sell Kounde's central defensive partner Diego Carlos to Aston Villa, but that deal will not impact Chelsea's bid to sign Kounde. The Spanish club need to raise funds this summer and privately acknowledge that it will be virtually impossible to try and keep Kounde at the club for a second summer after denying him a move last year. We spoke about Adam Newsom's report yesterday in Football London. There's been so much information over Kounde and why this deal looks like it's going to happen, and Chelsea feel very confident that it will be the first deal done. I've given my thoughts. I'm probably going to write some more pieces about him, because I do think that there is the pros and cons absolutely about his game, and he is still a young defender. But I look at what that side of the pitch needs for Chelsea, particularly Reece James, and I feel that Kounde... Listen, Chelsea have to sign defenders. They've put themselves in an awkward position with the contract situation. So you're going to have to sign someone, even if I personally would like to see Levi Colwill on the other side promoted. And maybe you look at other options there, Reece playing as a centre-back, which I really don't want to see. But the addition of Kounde, I think, is pretty exciting. And hopefully that could be completed now the takeover is done. Let's get into goalkeepers. We haven't spoken about goalkeepers this week, and once again Adam Newsom reporting yesterday for Football London that Chelsea are to renew efforts to sign American star and disrupt Bayern Munich's Manuel Neuer plan. Chelsea will renew their efforts to sign Gabriel Slonina this summer. Football London understands after a deal for the Chicago Fire goalkeeper broke down earlier this year following the sanctioning of Roman Abramovich. The 18-year-old established himself as Fire's first choice stopper during the 2021 campaign and has started each of their 13 MLS matches so far this term. Slonina has kept 5 clean sheets this season, a noteworthy feat given Chicago are bottom of the Eastern Conference. It is understood Chelsea sounded out a move for him in February, and there was confidence that a deal could be struck for the teenager. Then, of course, the sanctions hit, and like with a lot of Chelsea's potential deals, it all got stalled. This kind of is related to Kepa Arrizabalaga, obviously, because his future needs to be decided, and I think a lot of the comments in recent weeks with Kepa and Tuchel have kind of, to me, indicated that it's near the end, because Kepa not playing any of the remaining, I think, 3 FA Cup games, particularly that Middlesbrough and Palace game, were quite confusing. Listen, Chelsea got to the final, and listen, Mendy is the first choice keeper, but the fact that Kepa isn't playing those games anymore maybe says a lot, and maybe indicates that a decision has already been made. And given the new ownership and having a 75 million keeper on the bench, a second choice, I just don't think it's the shrewdest thing to happen. You know, if Kepa is let go this summer and Chelsea can find him a place, that's going to obviously release a lot of wages because he is very high on Chelsea's owners list. So I think that's a positive. In the case of Slonina, it's such a difficult position, backup goalkeeper, if this is what Chelsea are viewing him as, at least for the short term. Still a young keeper, and of course keepers have a very different lifespan to outfield players. You know, we've seen many keepers go into their 30s, particularly as Mendy, I think, has proved, you know, you come good later in your career. So it's going to be interesting to see whether he would be viewed as maybe a Courtois type situation where we loan him out, or under new ownership he instantly comes in and deputises Edouard Mendy and competes with him for minutes. So there are other teams involved, Bayern Munich, Wolves as well being linked. So if Chelsea can get this deal done, I think it would make a lot of sense. You know, if you're releasing a player like Kepa Arrizabalaga with his sort of value, and bringing in someone who can compete with Mendy, who's motivated, who comes in and improves that position, I think that would be a positive. I do want to mention this from Nazar Kinsella moving into defence. Arsenal and Leicester interested in Chelsea wonder kid Levi Colwill. The teenager has been a first season regular in Huddersfield Town's promotion push ahead of the Championship playoff final against Nottingham Forest on Sunday. There will be scouts from a host of Premier League teams in attendance at Wembley, with Crystal Palace, Southampton and Brighton among the others who want the talented centre-back. Listen, Colwill, like Guehi last year, I think people have seen the talent that comes out of Chelsea's academy, particularly in the defensive area with Fikayo Tomori as well, with the success he's had at AC Milan. And it doesn't really prevent these clubs, despite not having Premier League minutes, to look at these players and say they can do something in our first team. And when you've got two clubs like Arsenal and Leicester looking at him as well, I think that says a lot. I know Leicester were linked back in January, but Chelsea, you know, even the idea of maybe a Premier League loan for the second half of the season, but he stayed at Huddersfield, which I think was good for him. Massive part, as I say, of their playoff push, and now they are in the final against Forest tomorrow, and that's going to be a really exciting game to see how Colwill does at Wembley. So I want to see Colwill come back. I think it'd be a huge error of Chelsea cashing on him this summer. Let's talk about N'Golo Kante in the midfield area. You're a little bit surprised that Manchester United transfers have come up on your screen. This is from an Athletic article by Laurie Whitwell, their reporter. Why this is relevant to Chelsea is within this article, that's obviously a lot about Ten Hag's rebuild at Old Trafford. It does say about N'Golo Kante and United's potential interest in him this summer. Whitwell reports that N'Golo Kante is being considered. Kante's future is uncertain at Chelsea, and sources say he is expected to be made available for a reduced price due to his contract expiring in 12 months and Tuchel's desire to freshen up his midfield. Most interestingly, I don't think any of us knew this at the time, United have been offered Kante before in 2020 when Frank Lampard was in charge, but there was not a consensus on an approach, with some staff feeling the French World Cup winner's best days were behind him. Kante went on to shine in the Champions League final, but aged 31, his injury record has worsened. There has to be a big decision made on Jorginho and Kante. I think they very much fit into the same bracket because both of their contracts do expire in 2023, and you cannot have a situation again like we did with the defence moving into next season. Out of the two, I still think Jorginho is the one I'd be looking to sell and Kante would be the one I'd be looking to keep. It still feels a little bit bizarre that Tuchel went out of his way to praise Kante that much. Was it a tactic to try and get people to maybe spend on Kante this summer? I don't think that, given Kante, for all of Kante's injury problems, people still should value him very highly. But as the problem with Chelsea is how much can you lean on his availability anymore and influence if he's not? Is he a key player? This is something I wrote about for Football London. Can you value and can you look at Kante as a key player if he's injured and he's only playing 40% of your games in a season? That's a big question, a big debate you have to kind of have. And with Jorginho, the reason why I think it's best for him to move on is given his age, given maybe interest in Syria. Are we getting anything more of Jorginho? I think we've seen the best of Jorginho in 2021. I don't think he's going... There's no third act twist here of Jorginho. I think what you see is what you get. And the question is, do we invest and freshen up that midfield? Which I say absolutely. You cannot allow N'Golo Kante to leave also without investing in that midfield. Which then leads me... quite obviously into Declan Rice and potential replacements or additions in central midfield, which we've known about for several months. Matt Law was on the London is Blue podcast. Please go and listen to the full podcast. Link in the description box below. It was their 800th episode, so congrats to the guys at London is Blue pod. Not only because they get Matt Law on, but they've got great podcasts, not only in terms of reactions, interviews, collabs. They get so many great guests on. I think the Tinkermen, which is a friend of the channel, Joe Tweedy, on it's kind of a tactics podcast. So they've really branched out over the past year, and I think it's a great podcast. And their ones with Matt Law are so informative, obviously, given Matt's kind of contacts and his reputation within the Chelsea community. But he spoke about Declan Rice. He did in the podcast yesterday. This is what he had to say. You have to take West Ham's 150 million evaluation of Declan Rice with a pinch of salt. Boehly and co will want to back Tuchel, so I wouldn't totally write that one off. And moving forward into sort of why Tuchel is going to be backed by Boehly and the consortium, they don't see a better manager out there in the world. They think he's up there with Pep and Klopp. It's just a case of empowering him and giving him a chance to do what Pep and Klopp have done. So we look at that central midfield position, and with Aurelien Tchouameni looking like he's off to Real Madrid or PSG, massive pain, I think, because we had that opportunity last summer. I remember speaking about it on the channel Carefree Youth. My editor now, Scott Clayton, breaking the news last summer that Chelsea had conversations with Tchouameni, and there was a chance of Chelsea signing him. But we passed because we felt he needed more experience, and instead we got Saul Niguez, which obviously is a loan that just hasn't worked out and was very much a short-term solution to a longer-term problem. And Rice, if we were to sell Kante, for instance, let's go with the theory that Kante leaves. Either he goes to Man United, which I wouldn't want, but let's say he leaves and goes somewhere, or Jorginho leaves and goes somewhere, and Chelsea get a sizable fee, a decent fee for one of those two players. Will Chelsea test West Ham's resolve? Because Rice, as we've known for a while now, over a year almost, he ain't signing that new contract. And every year that goes by, I think the chance of chance of West Ham getting a massive fee for Rice, I think deteriorates. So, and I think with Rice as well, when anyone sort of gets scared of paying that money, it's a long-term investment on a player who I think would be transformative in the centre of the park for Chelsea. An incredible midfielder, and I don't know what doubts you still have over him. It's interesting looking at a lot of the player of the seasons and sort of the team of the seasons for the Premier League and how many rightly include Declan Rice. I think he's gone up another level this year, not only in terms of that defensive side of his game, his ability to eat up ground and be such an imposing presence. I thought what was so interesting was being at the game against West Ham when Rice came on compared to Kante and Jorginho, and how physically imposing he is. I just think he's absolutely what Chelsea's midfield lacks, but I don't want to see a repeat of 2017 where we sell Nemanja Matic, a defensive midfielder who we still haven't replaced, by the way, to Man United. And yeah, our midfield is weaker from there. So big calls to make for Chelsea and for Todd Boehly's consortium as they take over the club in the coming days. But that is it for today's edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you don't miss any of the uploads on the channel. Have a great weekend. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again very soon. All the best.